Hi, good afternoon, Mark, Kim.
Hello.
We think we figured out the adopted working loading issue.
Great.
Scott's going to talk about that just a second.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Be right back. All right. How's everybody doing today?
Okay. So the story on the scenarios that we left with yesterday is I did find that the source database when you created your New Year's was potentially not selecting the right database and the adopted and the working. So it is likely that you did not get the right working and adopted budget in the new year. And we also found, or I found, that the employee position start dates were being double incremented through that process. And in some cases they were, and in some cases they weren't, depending on if you had your employee contract date set on the salary plan grid. So I'm in the process of testing the fixes for that. And we explained all this with the morning group. And I gave them the option of having them delete and recreate the new year, or I would do it for them. And the morning group opted to have me do it for them. So unless somebody really, really wants to do it themselves, then we'll go with I'll do it tonight after we're all done. So if you look on the bottom of your screen, and it's just Tim, Kim, and Maeve. Oh, and Mark's here. Okay, so we have 5. So on the bottom of your screen, you can see the reactions. Just click a raise hand if everybody's up for me just recreating their new year tonight. So Kim, yes. Tim, did you actually create a new year, Tim? or are you holding off on that?
I wanted to get the model squared away, so we're very near that. And-
Okay.
And so I'll talk to you about a couple things when we get done with this.
Yeah, when we're at 3, when this is done, I want to connect and just make sure that you're moving forward, and if there are any other employee validations I need to help with. So, Maeve, are you okay with us creating your new year? Yes. Sue. Okay. So anyway, it is all this readapting to the budget columns and giving you the flexibility. I totally missed that we needed to make sure that the new year that didn't prompt you for all the individual budget columns was going to do the right thing, and it didn't. So I will fix that, and you guys will all have, hopefully by tomorrow morning, you'll have new year scenarios. So if there's no further discussion on that, Tim's going to go ahead and talk about the new year and the validations. Tim, did you get the copy of database to load?
Yeah, I thought there would be a new year here, but there's not.
Didn't I create it?
I don't see it.
Oh.
In the demo, because I copied the demo to the test.
Right. Right. I thought I had just created that as my last test. All right, hold on.
You can go ahead, create it in the background for me if you want, and I can talk about it.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. And I'll let you know when it's done. All right. Bye.
Okay, guys, can everyone see my screen? I've changed monitors, so hopefully it looks a little better.
It does look better. It's a lot bigger. Thank you.
Yep, good. So I'm trying to remember exactly where we left off yesterday. Now, I'm not in my new year. I should be. It's being created in the background right now, but this way it can keep talking to you guys. I'll just go over some of the things that we went over this morning with the morning group. We have this feature up here under help called support, send support email. You click on that, and I just added a new monitor, so things keep popping up on my other monitor. Pardon my weirdness while I try to get used to this. A little form will pop up, and everything is filled in already. All you have to do is put in a subject and a message, and it will also, so it'll email us, and you have to put in at least 10 characters. Get my keyboard working. 10 characters in the message. And then you can send it, and it will also send a screenshot of your screen automatically. You can take a screenshot within ESP, and it will send. It'll send that. I'll show you guys what it looks like when it comes into our email. Let me open one up here and bring it over here. So here this is an email we got from Mary Carnegie this morning. So her message, but it also tells us a lot of information about what has happened in the scenario, which is really helpful for us. And it does the screenshot. However, it just sends a screenshot. It doesn't give you the option to make annotations on the screenshot. So that's the only drawback. If you wanted to highlight something to show us on the screenshot, you wouldn't be able to do it unless you created the screenshot separately, saved it as a file, and then you could attach the file. So this is kind of a double-edged sword. It might not be what you want to use if you're going to send screenshots that you need to annotate. But if it's just an email within and the screenshot without any annotations work, you can use that.
So what did you click on again, Tim?
You go to help, support, send support email. And if this becomes something that is widely used or used often, we could probably make a toolbar icon for it. So they just have to click a toolbar icon instead of having to go to help, support, send support email. As far as the screenshot capability, I'll go over that. If you notice under help, screenshot, you have take a screenshot, which is also F11. You have screenshot and edit, and let me show you what that does. It's F12. It takes a screenshot and it popped up on my other screen. It opens up in Paint so that you can then, draw or whatever you want to do on it. But then again, you would have to save this as a file and then attach it. Actually, I like it better when the screenshots are pasted within the email itself and it's not a separate file. That way you don't have to save the file and then open it. So I guess if I had my choice, I would rather you guys just copy it, the screenshot, and paste it directly into the email. That way we can see it in the email and it saves a couple of steps. But we really appreciate the emails more than anything, describing what's going on, how you got to whatever it is you're showing us. And then if we could see the actual screenshot, it really says 1,000 words for us. And again, try to always make it the screenshot of the entire screen so that we can see all of your tabs, which tab you're on, which version you're on, which database you're on, the last time you did a recalc. All of that information is important for us. That way we don't have to email you back, or we've got that information there in the email. The more information you can give us about something, the better we'll be able to help you. The quicker we'll be able to help you as well. So F11 takes a screenshot. And if you use F11, let me show you that. Just F11. I don't think it actually tells you it took a screenshot, but then when you have an email, oh, it did. It made a little click noise. Again, if you're on Visions, you might not hear that. Then I think you can just Control V in the email, and it popped it right in there because it copied it straight to the clipboard when it takes the screenshot. And again, this is the way we prefer to get screenshots, is within the email rather than as a file that we have to save and open with another application. Let me look at my notes, just other things that we covered this morning. I think everything else can wait. Do you guys have any questions before we get started? Because I'm going to go over to the Assumptions tab and we'll just go through the assumptions and how the calculations are chained together. But before we do that, I wanted to know if you guys have any questions about the employees. Again, you should be going through your employees, checking the positions, make sure it aligns with Visions. Because we're going to have to rebuild your new year, I hope none of you have done any work in the model. You probably haven't yet, because when we have to delete and rebuild your new year, it will erase any work you've done in the model. Again, I'm on a full scope here, so it takes a few seconds to open because it's opening almost 2,700 records. For speed, if you limit your scope, if your scope is limited, when you load grids, they will load a lot quicker. And I don't know if I talked about this the other day. The plus and minus up here, this is how you collapse and expand the tree nodes. But if you hold the Control key down and press 1, it will collapse all the way. And then the Control key plus will expand all the way. So it's just a quick way if you have to really dig down into a tree node, use the Control key and the plus or minus, and it will do a full collapse or full expand. So nobody has any questions about their employees? Okay. Yesterday we talked about annualization, and I don't have a new year here yet, so none of my employees are annualized, but you guys should have some annualized employees there. When you create your new year, you're given the option to annualize your employees. And what happens under the covers there is it moves the position start and end date that comes in from Visions. It moves it to a full year because we're going to budget for a full year. So we call that annualized. And in effect, it moves their days to match the full position days in the model. Unfortunately, if I was in a new year, we could see that. I think we talked about it a lot yesterday, but I wanted to show you because we talked about copying. If you wanted to like undo your annualization, you could copy your work days over your model work days. And yesterday we talked about the only way to copy was to copy everything from Visions into the model, which would overwrite your model. But there is a way to copy just certain columns, and it is this button right here. We call it reconcile, which we kind of use the words copy, and we used to call everything reconcile when you would copy from your blue to your green or your purple to your green. But we're trying to move away from the word reconcile and use copy, but you still might see the word reconcile. And all it means is we're just copying from one data set to the other. So if you click on this toolbar button, and all this is the scope form, and it's just the third tab of the scope form. You'll see it when I open it. If you look down here, if you click on select, this is your actual scope form. If you were to have clicked this toolbar button here, the scope button, and then this is the third tab of the scope form. And the way this works is you pick the scenario, which is the scenario you're in, and you want to reconcile from the infinite vision set, which is the blue column. And then you just pick which columns you would like to reconcile or copy. And we discovered today it should be called position start date and position end date. Oh, I'm sorry, work days. Let me find it. Work days right here. So if you click reconcile, it's going to click show. So we want to show it as well. And you don't need to click any of these other salary plans or alignments yet. All you need to do is click work days, click OK. And actually, I probably won't have any because everything matches. I should have changed some in the, you guys would probably have some if you've annualized. Yeah, I don't have any that are different. Let me fix that real quick. But if you guys do that and you annualize and you're in your new year, you will see all of the differences. All the employees that annualized, their work days will be different than the Infinite Visions work days, and they should show up in a list. It's basically just comparing the work days of Infinite Visions columns against the work days of the model columns, and it's going to show you which ones are different so that you can then just reconcile or copy from Infinite Visions over the model. So let me just change one here and see if it'll. This might work. Is anybody doing that? Have they done that yet? And do you see the positions? So this is a way of copying from one data set to the over your model, but only just specific data, not the entire record. That way, if you have gone through and made changes to the account code or made changes to work hours or the salary plan or any other changes, this would be a way to copy something into the model from Infinite Visions columns without overriding the changes that you've already made. Rather than before, we talked about tools, copy Infinite Visions employees, that would overwrite every record. A lot of people use this tool after you're adopted and after the new year started, because you can open ESP and you can see what you budgeted for your adopted. And then you reload your employees into the blue columns. And then you can see where if everything that you anticipated in your adopted is being reflected in the actual Infinite Visions employees. You can see the deltas and say, hey, wait a minute, we budgeted this person at this account code, but in Visions, they're in another account code. So let me just try that one more time. So we call this the reconcile scope. Go down to work days. This is at the top now because this is the way ESP works. Anytime you check something, the next time you open the checkbox, normally we move that to the top so that you don't have to scroll all the way. Some lists can get very long. You want to scroll all the way down to find the one that you had checked. So it's already checked. Let me, hopefully I get this one delta. And I didn't, I'm not sure. But if you have a new year, if you have a new year scenario, all of your annualized employees should show up in this reconcile scope. And then you'll see a column that says reconcile that are checkboxes. You click the checkbox, click OK, or save it, and it will copy all of those work days over your model work days. Sorry, I don't have a good example here to show you yet. Anyway, when I get the new year built, we might can do that. Any questions about reconcile? So it's a good way to copy just certain data without overriding anything else that you've changed. Of course, when it comes to work days, you know, you can just manually type them in too real quick on the grid. So, you know, it's up to you how you want to do it. And again, to get out of any type of context menu that I was in, you have to click that red. This was red a while ago. I clicked it, and this will reset me back to the scope that I had. Okay. No questions on employees right now and how to check, how to verify your data with Visions. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the Assumptions tab. This is, I think, everybody's biggest headache and where they get the most nervous because of all of the calculations, and there are a lot of properties for each of the calculations. So we're going to start out under the assumptions here. We're going to look at the mandatory cost. These are already built for you generally. And for the new year, all you're really interested in is, unless you're going to add a new calculation, which we will, the PFMLI, you're only just going in and making small changes to the rates. Okay, Scott says I have a new scenario there. So I'm going to open that new year scenario now. So here's my new year scenario. Scott, did you annualize employees by chance?
Yeah, I know I did not annualize.
Okay.
I lost your screen share. I wonder where that went.
Can everyone else still see my screen?
No,
Oh, okay. I don't know why. You guys could see it earlier though, right?
yes, we can see it now.
Okay. All right.
It's loading. Mhm.
Right. Thank you.
That'll happen when you pick just a select window rather than your entire screen. If you've reloaded something, it won't pick up what you reload.
Okay. Well, I just, for this one, I selected entire screen. So hopefully
Yeah,
it won't.
so it should work fine then.
Okay. All right. So I'm in 22-23-1 modeling now, which should be the same one that you guys are in. And we're going to go back up here and look at these calculations. Now we call these mandatory costs. You can name these whatever you want. Some districts call them fixed costs. Some districts call them payroll cost. Whatever you want to call them, you can change it here, and we can also change it on the columns heading in the employees tab. And the way it's basically set up is we're saying take all of the salary accounts, which if you go down here and you look under these object groups, you have this one called salary accounts, and that's the exact one that it's referring to. And it's the salary accounts is built up of anything 01 asterisk. So these are all the salary accounts, and they're roll-up accounts, FTE accounts, as well as lump sum budget salaries that you budget for on the financials tab. So it's saying apply these calculations to those accounts. Then you expand calculations, and we'll look at the first one here, PERS employer contribution. Let me move this to the left a little bit. We'll start at the top, and you just have the label, which is the label you see over here. And then this would be the column heading, because you might not want a long name in the column heading so that your columns don't get too wide. Lee, we'll go over what this calculation type means in a minute, because we have to look at another table for that. But just retirement is fine for right now. And this is saying what is the source amount that we're going to apply this calculation to. And this is saying it's going to be in the salary accounts, and it's going to be on the total wages. So there's a total wages column on the employees tab, which is all of their annual rate plus any other supplemental pay. So basically all of their pay, not including any benefit pay, because you don't calculate payroll cost on benefits. So it's going to take an employee's total wages and then apply this calculation to it. The next section is called the qualifier. For this calculation, there is no qualifier. This is going to be, actually it is going to be qualified, but it's going to be based on the next section, which is a data schedule. Now the data schedules, if you look back over on the left over here, there's a section at the very bottom called schedules. And this is what you can see the data schedule here says PERS. It is referring to this PERS schedule over here. So you can click on it here and see the schedule. This is within the calculation. Or if you go to it over here on the left and click on it, you get the schedule, but you also get some other information above it that you probably want to take a look at least initially. And basically what this is saying is based on employees' PERS status, this is the rate that is being applied to their total pay. And the way these numbers got here was these were loaded from visions. This table was loaded from visions, and then these vision values were copied into the model. So this is what they're getting this year. And then these are the numbers that you will change because these are the values you expect next year. This default value up above here, this is the value that gets applied to the lump sum dollars on the financial tab, salaries. So salaries that don't belong to FTE. these values gets applied to that. There's two options here. You can have ESP calculate it for you, where it basically takes an average and just uses the average. Or if you don't check that, you have to manually enter a number. Most districts that I've seen, they use one of the higher rates here so that they're making sure that they're budgeting plenty of money for this calculation. So then we go back to the actual calculation. You click away, it'll close the schedule. Only when you click here, as you can see, when you click here, you only get the actual table. You don't get any of the default value and any of those other check boxes when you look at it this way. This is just what we set up behind the scenes to pull in where to look for those rates in Business Plus. And then you have these factors. Anytime you're using a data schedule, you usually want to keep your factors at 1, because it's going to take the rate that it gets from the schedule and then multiply it times 1, then times 1 again. And this is just for the blue infinite visions columns. For the model, you have the factor A and factor B as well. So it'll get multiplied by whatever comes in from the schedule times 1 times 1. This will change, like let's look at Social Security real quick. It doesn't use a data schedule because everybody has the same rate. So then you have to manually enter the rate into the factor. It'll take their total wages, which is their value column, multiply it times 0765. I'm going to go back to PERS. But since you're using a data schedule for the rate, you make sure you leave these at 1. And we've had some people put 0 in there. Don't want to multiply times 0. So just leave these at 1 when you're using a data schedule, unless you have a reason to multiply it. Like if you wanted to cut everything in half by chance, you could put in 0.5 here. We'll talk about using that again in just a second when we do the PFMLI calculation. And then all these other ones you won't really worry about. The result is 02111. So all of the dollars will get calculated and they will get stuck in 0211 on the financials tab. And then at the bottom, it's just some information about how much is currently being calculated for this one calculation. Any question about this particular calculation? Pretty easy. The good thing is we set everything up for you when we brought you on as a client, and all you really probably need to worry about is going to the schedule. And as soon as you go into the schedule, it goes into edit. We call it edit mode. You can see it's a blue border. You can type in there. If you somehow get out of edit mode, this little icon right here tells you if you're in, and that's not in edit mode anymore. Notice that it's red and dark green. But if you need to edit it, you just click there and it puts it back in edit mode. So all you'll really probably be worried about with this calculation is updating these rates and maybe the default rate if you don't let ESP calculate it for you. If you know everything, you just want to increase it by maybe 3%, you could just use the inflation factor here, put in 3%, and it would just automatically inflate everything for you by 3%, or whatever percent you put in there. That's hopefully all you'll be worried about with this calculation. Same for all of these calculations, is just changing the rate. We'll look at the next one, PERS pickup. Now this one, it is used, start at the top, you got the name, the column heading, it's using the same columns that it's going to apply the calculation to, but it does have an employer qualifier. And what this is saying is that the PERS status, if it's not equal to, that's what the left and right arrows mean, if it's not equal to working retiree. So basically everybody except working retirees calculate this calculation on them. And if you're not sure what these symbols mean, if you click on that little tooltip right there, usually I think all you'll probably use is the not equal or the equal. for the qualifier. But you could also have like work days must be greater than 100, or work time or work hours. There's many ways to build a qualifier. You can see, you can choose all of these options and say, you know, like their benefits or their cost total must be over $100,000. There's many ways of building the qualifier here. So here's a good example where I clicked something and I changed something that I didn't mean to. So I'm just going to refresh. This is available on any grid. It happens quite often where you're clicking around, and sometimes when you click something, you accidentally select something else and you're not sure what you did. So you can always just refresh and get rid of any changes that you made. It's like saving a document, refreshing a document, and it asks you if you want to save. If you're not sure what you changed, just say no. And then it takes me back to what I had there. So this is not using a data schedule, and this is just giving all of the non-working retirees, it's multiplying their wage times 0.06. And it's sticking the result in 0212.
So Tim, ours says model PERS not equal to qualifying. That's not what we want, is it?
Not equal to qualifying. No. No. Is it probably you don't want it set to working retiree, right?
Well, we calculate PERS on everybody.
Oh.
So
do you have a PERS pickup then?
That is our PERS pickup. That's
you want it
what
on
I'm looking at.
You want it on everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kim,
yeah, go ahead.
Let me connect and look and see what you're seeing. Hold on.
Okay.
Go ahead and move on, Tim.
Right. More than likely, Kim, we'll see, but you're going to just set this to none and get rid of the qualifier.
Okay.
That's my guess, but we'll let Scott see what he says.
Thank you.
Because that way it'll just calculate on everybody. If you do have a qualifier, if you look over here on the left, not only do you have the result mask, but you have the qualifier, just so you can quickly see kind of what's in this calculation over here. This is my favorite, Social Security, because it's just so easy. And it's just 0.0765 for the factor. And it's going to 0220. One thing that you guys might want to know about is there's this checkbox called clear totals. And some districts, they have a couple of calculations that are going to the same result mask. And let's just say I had another Social Security that was going to 0220. And these do work top to bottom. So if I put in another Social Security after this one, we'll call it Social Security 2 or whatever, I would want to make sure that clear totals is not checked for the second one. Because the way this works is it wipes out Social Security and rebuilds it. If you don't check that, then it just leaves it in Social Security, and then the next time you recalc it keeps adding it. So if you have two calculations going to the same result, just make sure that the clear totals is selected for the first one in the chain here on the left, so that you don't clear it out. And as always, whenever you make these changes, I wouldn't make too many changes before you save, recalculate, go to your employees, and look at the calculation and make sure that it's calculating the way you expect it to, you know, because it's so easy to mistype a number or mistype a decimal or add an extra zero. So that way you don't get too far ahead before you realize you're calculating into the billions of dollars because of a misplaced decimal. And I'll show you how to do that and whenever we add the PFMLI in just a minute. Workers' comp is pretty easy. It is using a data schedule. There's a workers' comp data schedule over here on the left. Again, it's based on the workers' comp status of each funding on the employees tab. And these are the rates. And then for this one, notice that calculate average factor is checked. ESP will calculate the average factor. And to see it, you go back, what the average factor is, you go back to the calculation, scroll to the bottom, and here's the average factor. So ESP is calculating that as that is the average workers' comp factor being used, and that's what it's going to use on all of the non-FTE accounts to calculate workers' comp. Next one, unemployment. I believe that's just it's like Social Security. It's just a value. Okay, any questions about, oh, here's PFM. Oh, it's already added there. Dang it, I wanted to add it myself.
Yeah, I added it before we copied.
Right.
You can right click, delete it.
Yeah, I'm going to do that because I want to show everybody how to add it. Does anybody have PFMLI there already? We might have added it for some of you. I'm not quite sure.
I have it, but
Okay.
I think we added it last year for our budget.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one and add it back real quick, just so I can show the process of adding. Because there's a few things to be, I'm going to go ahead and recalculate my scenario on employees. It won't add but a few seconds to it.
Hey, Kim.
Yes. Yes.
Looking at your PERS pickup, apparently you have a PERS status called qualifying, which means they're in waiting status. And we must have set that up that if they're in waiting status to not calculate PERS pickup.
Well, I would prefer to calculate it on everyone.
Yeah, just take the employee column
Okay.
and the operator out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's gone now. Okay, so how to add a calculation? I would suggest just right click on a current calculation and click add calculation. You can remember order is important if you're adding ones that are going to similar or to the same result. So that's why you have insert here, because you might want to have one in a particular order. But if not, we can just add this one to the bottom, add calculation. And the first thing it's going to ask you is, what is the result mask? Scott, do you remember what that was? I should have looked before I deleted it.
I used 243. Kim
Okay.
used 235. I'm not sure if there's, I mean, it's just, they can pick whatever they want, but you can use 243 for the demo, for the training.
So you pick the result mask, click OK. And then you might want to change the label, because it's going to use the label of the object that you picked. And if it doesn't say PFMLI, you might want to change that PFMLI. Guess it would help if I used the right keyboard. Sorry. PFMLI. Okay. And then the column heading, of course, you want it to be short and sweet. Yeah,
You can just leave it. If you leave that blank, it'll use the top label.
Oh, that's
too,
right.
So,
This is a fixed cost. It's going to be on the total wages. Now, we have it's not using a qualifier or a schedule. And this 0.0045 came from this unemployment, because I right-clicked on it and used it sort of as a template for the next one. So that's why it sort of took the characteristics of the calculation from above it as the template. And I don't even know what is Kim. What do you guys use for your PFMLI rate?
Well, we had 0.002 because it was only going to be half the year. That's what we used last year. So this year it'd be 0.004 if we anticipate that it will be effective the whole year.
Right. Well, that brings up a good point about what I was going to tell you guys about these different factors. Let's say you know what the rate is. Let's just say we know the rate is 0.004. But you know it's only going to be maybe 6 months or 6 months out of the year. You could then use this factor and put in 0.6, 60%, 0.06. I got too many points in there. This is what I mean. It's easy to fat finger something. You could then you could put in the normal rate and then use the second factor to artificially lower it if you know it's just going to be for a certain part of the year. So anyway, that's all that does is it just gives you a second factor to multiply by if you want to use it. And then that's really it. You just double check that the account mask for the result is correct. And then we'll save it. Add a no, adding PFMLI. I do want to recalculate because after I save it, I'm going to go to the employees and financials and make sure what it calculates is what I expect to see. Now I feel like I got an error again. Well, you know what? I didn't, hang on guys, ignore the man behind the screen for a second. I forgot to do an important step before I got on the phone with y'all. My bad.
Under the model factors, it says include non-roll-up pay. What does that mean exactly?
Non-roll-up pay is pay that is on the financials. It's not rolling up from employees. Okay. Coming back. Okay, and we're going to add it back real fast. Is that 04? 4.06. Okay. 1244. All right.
Isn't
Sorry about
0.06 6%?
Yes.
Don't you mean 0.6?
0.60%. Right. Yep. Thank you. Because 60% of the year is what we're simulating, right? The way ESP works is if you don't see a percent symbol in the descriptor, like if there's not a percent symbol here, you enter it as a decimal. In some places, you'll see that there is a percent symbol here. That means you enter it as a percent. We probably should get consistent one way or the other. I'm not sure why we have two different ways for some fields. Okay, good. Now I'm there. So now what I would do is I would go to the employees. And I'm not sure if I recalculated the scenario. I thought I did. But I know I did not recalculate because if you look down here at the last recalc date and time, it was at 10 o'clock this morning. So I'm going to manually recalculate the scenario. If you click here, this will recalc the scenario, and you also have a checkbox to recalculate the employees. Recalculate employees. Because if I don't do this, it will not calculate that PFMLI calculation. It will not show up. And we should see my red flag go to green. Oh, hang on, I got an error. That might be related to what I just did. It might not. I'm not
Was it
sure.
the recalc? You recalced?
Right. So what I would do now is go, I'm on the employees tab, scroll over to the, oh, I don't have any fixed cost.
Hold on. Let me
Yeah,
look
so-
at your calculation you created.
Right. If you right click up here, go to the model, you have a fixed cost submenu, and you should have all of your fixed cost calculations that you created, as well as the percent, which would be the total percent of the cost, as well as the total, which is there by default, the fixed cost total. And the error is stopping this from being calculated right now.
While Scott looks at the error, can you tell me again, where do I see the value, default value that it applies to non-FTE?
You go to the calculation,
Right?
and you scroll to the bottom,
Okay.
and you should see average factor, fourth one up.
Okay. And it automatically is applying that average factor to non-FTE that are eligible, or meet.
Well, yes, that's the factor that's being applied. For which calculation are you talking about?
If I hand put in calculated field in finance, and it's going to calculate the cost, what factor is it using? You showed me something.
Yeah, so like back over here on PERS, we hand
Okay.
entered 0417 here.
Okay, so it's under the schedules, not under the
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. Where you enter it, yes, it's here.
Okay.
But if you calculate the average, if you have ESP calculate the average, then it depends on the specific usage. You know, you have to look, the average factor is stored with the calculation, because it could be different if perchance two calculations use the same data schedule based on qualifiers and everything. The average factor or the blended rate that it's calculating could be different.
Yeah.
So that's why. But if you're going to just flat key a number in, you do it directly on the schedule.
Okay.
So I'm going to right click, go to the model, go to the fixed cost submenu, and add this. This is there now because I added it on the assumptions PF MLI column. Of course, it's going to be 0 right now because I must have done something that caused it to error. Any insight into that, Scott?
I'm looking, it's loading now.
Okay.
And if it is something that you didn't do or didn't do right on the calculation, I need to validate it so that it doesn't happen. So it's calculated fixed cost sum, total wages, model factor A. Expenditure, we want to go to.
So while we're here, I wanted to talk about the work days again. We seem to talk about them a lot. Scott did not annualize my employees. So that's why you'll see that their work days from Visions matches the work days for the model. And I know they probably should be 186 for the licensed. When you're ready to annualize the employees, when you recalculate just the employees, this is the recalculate employees button. Here's the annualize employees. If you select that, it will annualize. It will move their work days to match the work days of the position start and end date. It ignores the work days that came from Visions, and it moves their days to match the position start and end dates, which should be 8:30 to 6:17. And it'll calculate 186 for these guys here. And these are the ones that we looked at yesterday that positions that they're over 1 FTE. That's why they have the red exclamation mark, because some either they're not segmented where they work one position for part of the year and then another account code for another part of the year, or more than likely they didn't have their old position closed. And that's why they're coming in as 2 positions in ESP. So if you don't annualize, and after you check everybody out and you are ready to annualize the employees that were mid-year hires, you just recalculate the scenario and check annualize here and recalc, and it will do that. And you only need to do it once. You won't have to do it again and again, unless, of course, you on the daily, or you reload the employees and you bring in another mid-year hire. But at that point, it might be easier just, like if I just brought this person in from Visions, I could just go in here and manually change their work days. You wouldn't have to go through the annualization process if you didn't want to. You could just change it, and it's just a few.
But again, if you did that by hand on there, if you refresh your information from Visions, reload it, and recalculate it, it's going to set it back to 127.
No. If you reload, well, if you reload and then copy into the model, yes.
Right.
But just reloading would not do that.
Right.
Yeah, but that goes for any of the information. If you change it in the model and then you copy everything over from Visions, yeah, it's going to overwrite that. Yeah,
right.
You're right. That's why, hopefully before you start working in the model, we get all of these employees squared away, so that you might do multiple copies as you fix things in Visions, and then reload into ESP, and then copy into the model. And then at some point, you're going to have to stop copying all employees. me just see if anybody, just curious if anybody, does anybody have any employee that is grayed out like this with a line through it? This might be a case where, I don't know if the daily ran, where if you have somebody who was hired since the last time you reloaded the employees, this is how they're going to look. They notice they do not have any blue values, infinite vision values, because they were not there when we reloaded the employees, but they might have daily values because they've been hired since the last time we reloaded the employees. I've often mentioned to Scott that, you know, maybe there needs to be a summary we do of anybody that has come in new. So here we go. Ann Hafner, she does have daily values, but she does not have any model or infinite vision. So when we loaded infinite visions on, well, today, this morning, she didn't exist. Well, that doesn't make sense because the daily is done before the, I'm not sure what
Tim,
happened with this.
it has to do with the way, well, those aren't vacancies though.
Right.
I'm actually looking into the alignment of the employees from the daily into the model.
Okay. But this is what you would see if you have a new employee that's been added since the last reload. They'll have daily values, but no model. And then you could simply right click, copy funding from Infinite Visions daily. And we'll do that just to see what happens. And just again, a warning that you're going to overwrite your model. Since there's nothing in the model, there's nothing to worry about here. When you are creating or moving employees, it can take a few seconds to do it because it has to build an entire record for that employee. So oh, I got an error on that too. Oh, this is the old one. All right, as soon as this finishes, we'll go back and keep looking at the calculations on the assumptions. Real quick, while we're here, these red dots, employees with the red dots, that is just, you probably already know, that's just supplemental funding. It's supplemental pay that doesn't align with their main account code, and it's separate, has its own account code. I don't see a lot here in this scenario.
Yeah, Tim, I can duplicate the error. It has to do with a change to the calculation. I'm trying to figure out what is, the column is not set right, but I don't see what it is, so I'm working on it.
The table editor I wanted to tell you guys about, if you go to Tools, Administration, Table Crosswalk Editor. This is just a warning that be careful in the editor with what you change, because these are the actual tables that ESP uses. But the one I wanted to look at was employee status. These are all the statuses of pull in from visions. And remember on that calculation, it was labeled as a retirement. And if you notice here, there's an include retirement. This is what it's referring to. So all of these statuses will have that calculation applied to it, unless it uses that qualifier. But another way that you could not calculate retirement would be to like uncheck which row was working retiree, this one. You could uncheck it here, include retirement. That would be another way to do it. Or using the qualifier is probably the best way to do it. But that's what that was referring to. When it says the calculation type, you have 3 types. One is called fixed costs, one is called taxes, and one is called retirement. And then this controls which calculation is applied to which status. Still doing this? Feels like it's. I don't think I got this Ann Hafner copied over. All right, let's go back to the assumptions. So any questions about calculations or adding the PFMLI? Mark, have you guys added that yet? Mark or Timothy? We might have added, Scott might have added.
Yes, ours are set up.
Okay.
Yes, ours is set up.
Okay, great. And Maeve, do you have yours added? I don't remember if Mark did it.
Pardon?
The PFMLI calculation. Do you know if you have that added to your, was it added last year?
I do not know.
Okay. All right.
Was the PFML, I'm talking to Mark on my cell phone. Was the PFMLI added to our budget last year? Assumption action? PFMLI. It's not sounding familiar to Mark.
Okay. Well, I mean, you have your scenario open. Do you see it? You would see it if it was there.
Well, it accidentally got closed, so no, I don't know.
I see. Oh, you know, I just realized why that employee never copied over, because my notes.
Well, I'll make a note.
So this is why that employee I was working on didn't copy. I didn't see this. I'm going to cancel that.
Assumption action.
But Maeve, did you follow how to add that? So yeah, check it and let me know if it's there. If not, I'll help you add it.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
All right. I'll check I'll check and see if it's there.
Okay. All right. It's real easy to add.
Okay.
So the next grouping here are the object groups. And these are groups of objects, obviously object groups, that you want to perform a certain calculation on. So you can see the 2 standard ones that are always there are salary accounts and salary roll-up accounts. And that's because back up here on the calculations, the trigger, which means everything in the salary accounts will have these calculations applied to them. The other group is the roll-up accounts, and this is telling ESP that these will roll up from the employees to the financials. So if you have a new account that is a FTE account, you would need to come in here. If you double click it, it'll give you a list and you apply the checkbox next to it. The salary accounts up here, it'll pull in anything that's 01, starts with an 01. It'll treat that as salary, which means that it's going to have calculations applied to the money that's in it. These calculations. Any questions about those? They normally don't change too much year to year, but if you do have a new salary account, you need to make sure it gets added or it's showing up in here. This other one that gets used quite often is what we call a utilities, and it's usually an inflation. When you want to apply normally like electricity, fuel, water, sewage, garbage, and you want to apply a standard flat inflation to it, you might or might not already have it created there. I'm not sure, but it's real easy to create. This should say the group type is inflation. And the way this works is you create a group, you call it an inflation group. And what you're really interested in, besides the name, of course, utilities, is this inflation section over here at the bottom. And what it's saying is there's a source column. It's saying take whatever's in the working scenario and add. Now notice there is a percent sign here, so you do it as a percent. Add 5%. So it's going to take whatever's in the working, and you have many choices here. Most of the time, it's going to be either your working or your adopted. That's just going to be your source dollars. It's going to take whatever in the working, add 5%, and then stick it into these objects. So I'm going to go ahead and save and recalculate, and then I'll go to the financials tab and show you what that looks like. Any questions about that? I had a person over at Clackamas last week. She added every single object from 300 up into this group and put an inflation on it. So it was just a very, 10 minutes of work. She increased her entire budget, all the 300s. I think she used like 3.5%. And then she was able to see what the dollar was on that for every object. So it's up to you how you want to use it. You could create another group if you wanted to with a different inflation factor. Again, I had to make sure that I recalculated, or if I went to the financials tab, it would not have done the inflation group for me. So you can make changes on the assumptions here, but make sure you recalculate when you save so that you can see the changes in the grids. Because as you can see, it takes a couple of minutes to recalculate, depending on how big your district is. But this allows you at least to make quite a few changes before you have to recalculate. Scott, can I just refresh, or do I need to recalculate? I'm recalculating as well right now. he got that error fixed for my PFMLI. And one of the reasons why this takes a little while is, remember, we take everything back to the base, the loaded values, and then rebuild it. It does make for a little bit more time, but it makes going in and changing, I could go back in and change this inflation to 3% because it doesn't bake in the 5%. It takes the values back to the working each time and then adds the 5%. And that's what allows you to go in and make changes because it's not baking any of the numbers in. All right, so that's done. Notice that my flag up here, we call this the recalc flag, is green, which is good. My recalc date and time down here is set. This is always one of the things that I check when people call me or email me and say my numbers don't look right, is we always make sure that they've recalculated, because a lot of times they haven't. They just forget to do the recalc. So that's always going to be one of the first things we ask you is, have you recalculated the scenario? Oh, my screen is so big now. So if you scroll down, if you notice, here are those 4 object groups that I put in the utility group. And this icon here means it's in the inflation, it is an inflation group. And I forgot to tell you, you can do a negative inflation. And if you did that, it would be a down arrow. But we know that we've increased these by 1%. And the way I can check it is, because we told it, use the working, take the working, add 5%. Oh, I didn't mean to move all of those, sorry. So I must have grabbed up here and that moved the entire group. So if you ever get your grid in a state you don't like it and you don't want to move a bunch of them, you can just reset your layout real fast, because I only need to move 1 column and it'll set it back to the default. So I just want to grab the working, move it to the left of the amount column. So what it did was it took the working, copied it into the fixed amount, and let me show, by default, it's not there, but you can show it if you right click, go to the model, because I'm working in the model. And if you go to this roll up submenu, roll up meaning these are the values that are rolling from the left to the right to get to this final amount column. There is one called inflation. So it's taking 5% of the working, put it in the fixed amount, adding 5% to get my final total. And a good way to check it is I put the working next to the final value. And then if you right click, you can put what's called a delta column. But we have a delta column that shows a percent. And this is the name of the column if you want to change the name. So 5% difference between from here to here. So this is what I mean about you make a change on the assumptions, and then it's best before you get too far down the road to come to the financials or come to the employees and check it and make sure, yeah, that's what I want to happen. And use these delta columns to make sure that it's about what you would expect to see. Now I believe, let me go to the employees. I believe that my PFMLI should be there now. Scott, we need to look and see why when I did that reconcile, it stuck this none in there, but it doesn't seem to be affecting my scope. I'm not sure that for some reason that reconcile put that in there.
Yeah, I did see that. I've got it on my list.
Okay. You can, one thing that, if it depends on how big your monitor is, you can have these freeze lines, because a lot of times you want to keep the account code there. You can move the freeze line over. I'm going to move it back. I don't really want it there. Just something to use. And I want to get rid of my daily here. I don't need it anymore. I'm going to reset my layout. Okay. So I'm going to scroll to the right because I'm going to look at, okay, good. My fixed costs are there now. So 2 ways to check that PFMLI. You have by default, you have the fixed cost total. And these are the fixed cost, are the payroll cost, are mandatory costs, whatever you want to call them. These are those calculations that we worked on a few minutes ago. This is the sum of all, I think it's 5 calculations on this value right here. So this is the total wages. If you remember the calculation, it said take the total wages and apply those calculations to get the total cost. And because there's a little yellow toolbar, tooltip, it's hard to get it to show right there. If you put your cursor in there, click on it, let it sit for a second, you have a tooltip that pops up and it says, these are the fixed cost details. And what it's doing is it's taking the 33090 and it's applying the PERS calculation, which is, now this is based on Stephanie Wilson's status, PERS status, but whatever it was, it came out to 0.0586, multiplying it times 33090 to get 1939. Then the PERS bond, Social Security, so 0.0765 times 33090. And it just, and then you look all the way down, then we get to the PFMLI that I just added. And this is because we did the 06 times the 004. So the effective rate is actually 0.0024 times 33090 for $79. So that this 7,080 is a sum of each one of these individual calculations. However, we do have a way to show each individual column or calculation if you need to see it. And for PFM, if you add a new calculation, I suggest at least show it once. It's not there by default. So if you go to your model, and then you notice you'll have a fixed cost submenu. And then this has all of those fixed cost calculations that we worked on earlier. And there is now the PFMLI column. Right. So you could even manually check it if you want. 34,221 times 0.0024, $82.13. Pretty cool, huh? So whenever if you need to make a change or wiggle the number, all you got to do is go to the assumptions tab, go to that rate or that calculation, and then just go to the factor and make some changes. And if you notice down here at the bottom, we've been talking about this, the average factor, there's that factor that it was using, 0.0024, which is 0.6 times 0.004. So for the entire all funds, we're calculating 332,977. And if you go to the financials now, I gotta look, what did okay, 244. I wanted to make sure I look at the right result, 244. If you go here now, 244, we are calculating, there's the value. This is a combination of all of the roll up, as well as, well, we don't have any yet. Everything is coming from the employees tab. We don't have any fixed lump sum salary budgets in here yet. But this would include not only from the employees tab, but also like licensed subs, when there's a fixed amount here. When you're saying, I want to put $200,000 into licensed sub, because it's a salary account, it's going to calculate the PFMLI and add it to this as well. So this is a combination. And you even, remember we talked about the columns, you could right click, model, go to those roll up columns. You could even break down the ones that are being, oh, here we go, roll up, that are being rolled over from the, let me just add it. These are the non-roll-up fixed costs. So these are fixed costs that it's going to be zero because I don't have any salary on any of my like substitutes right now. So it is zero. But then there's a column for the fixed costs that are being rolled up from the employees tab, roll up fixed cost, which should be the same as what we see for the total right now. Yep, 170,314. So this is that 244 that I set it as the result for my PFMLI. Now, Scott, one thing I noticed is I'm not getting my my icon for my fixed cost. That's something we might want to check. If you notice, these other fixed costs have the icon so you can easily see them, and I'm not sure, maybe because I picked the wrong object to be the result, but that should be there. We will check that to see so that you can easily see, yes, that is a calculated total that's coming from the fixed cost calculations. Okay, so I know that's a lot about calculations, but any questions? Once you kind of understand it, it kind of makes sense.
Tim, did you recalculate the full scenario?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not sure why that. Normally it does, but you and I were calculating at the same time, so maybe a recalc would fix that. We'll check it again in a minute.
So I have a question on my, back on the assumptions tab, the utilities.
Mm-hmm.
I've got those in there, but the line where it says utilities, where yours says utilities inflation 5%, mine it says utilities and then it has the masks, but it's lined out. Is
your active box checked? This basically turns this on, and yeah, that's probably
no, it isn't. Okay.
Yeah, this notice
Perfect.
if I uncheck it,
yep,
it lines it
okay.
out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a way that you could go. You can do that with all of this stuff, really. If you want to keep it in you don't have to delete it. You can just unactivate it or inactivate it. And that way it'll just remove the calculation, but it keeps it in here. Does everybody follow that? So if you decided you don't want PFMLI in there, you could just go to the calculation. It's usually at the top, uncheck active, and that takes it out of the calculations, but it leaves it in there. So if you want to add it back in later, it's already there. You're not actually deleting the calculation. You're just removing it from the chain. And you can do that with calculations, with these inflation groups. You can even do that with your pay components. You spend a lot of time creating the pay components. Rather than deleting it, if you don't want to use it, you might want to just unactivate it so that it's there in case you do need it, or you want to go in and just make a few changes to change it into another supplemental, because these are a lot of work to set up, and you might not want to just delete the entire calculation. So again, I've been clicking because I was showing Kim some things, and I don't want to try to backtrack and figure out what I checked. So I can just refresh my grid, and it actually is going to tell me what I changed. And I could go in and fix these, but I'm just going to refresh. And it'll get rid of any changes I made and haven't saved yet. Sometimes when you're clicking around, you accidentally click things and you don't want to save it. So just refresh. Okay, so we've covered quite a bit. Calculations, object groups, inflation, how to check it on the employees, how to make sure that, scroll up here, how to make sure that what you're getting on the employees is rolling over correctly. Okay, that's good. Okay, so I guess we can look at medical plans next. This is something that is definitely a big part of your new year. It's finding out what is the deal going to be with medical benefits. And we'll talk about administrators later. So let's just start with the Certified District Employee Medical Plan. The way it's set up for most of you guys is it's based on a monthly benefit. So I'm going to select it on the left, and if you look over on the right, you have the name Certified District Employees. That's the name of this benefit plan. This is, if we pull in the deduction from IV, telling it where to look, you could put an inflation factor on all of these calculations. If you wanted to just put an inflation factor without actually wiggling the numbers, you could do that, either a percent or a dollar amount. But if you keep scrolling down, if you leave those blank, it won't affect anything. Most benefit plans do not use a data schedule. We'll get to Infinite Vision's loading when we look at the administrators, because they have their own plans usually, and we just pull in the money from Visions and apply an inflation factor to that. But right now we're looking at certified. So the first thing you come to is the qualification level 1. And for most of you, I don't know, some districts are different. And this is usually based on FTE. This is a qualifier. And the way this is working, you have many different qualifiers here. You could use work time, how many hours they work in a week, because I believe at one point, Obamacare was going to be based on how many hours they work in a week. And there are how many, I know in Washington, they use how many days they work in a year to qualify them. Or maybe, no, I'm sorry, it's work time, how many hours they work in a year. You could put that threshold here. But for most of the Oregon districts, it's FTE. And if they're 0.5 or higher, they will get $14.30 per month. Now this is, obviously, these are values from last year, right? Because it copied everything from the assumptions into the new year this year. And you're going to probably want to leave this Infinite Visions monthly benefit alone, because that's what, anytime you see a factor for Infinite Visions, that's what they're getting this year. But next year, you're going to increase that. You're going to say, well, we expect certified to pay, not that much, $18.50 a month. And then you have other levels too, like you might have somebody between 2.5 to 5.0, they get a different rate. Does everybody just use 0.5 or higher, or do you guys use different rates depending on their FTE?
Ours are prorated based on FTE.
Right. And then at the bottom, you have the 240, where all of these values get played. They're all separate on the employees, but they will all roll into 240 on the financials tab. And remember, this is a monthly benefit number here. It's kind of different than anything else we do. It's based on their monthly benefit. And then the certified employees, classified, there is a no benefits, because the reason why is you have these benefit plans, you create these benefit plans, and the way they get from the assumptions tab to the actual individual employee is through their salary plan. So note these benefit plans here, and then I'm going to go to the salary plan tab. Now, I need to show you guys this. I made a change to that certified model monthly plan, and this is asking me, hey, there are unsaved adjustments pending. Do you want to apply these adjustments before switching? So I'm going to say no, or you could say yes, and it would do a save, right? Because we don't want to switch tabs unless if you've made changes. You could cancel and go back and undo the change or save But a lot of times that's one way to get rid of your changes is just to switch tabs and say, no, I don't want to apply. And it'll switch the tab without saving. So on the salary plan tab, notice you have a benefit plan column. And these, if you double click here, these are all of those benefit plans that we created on the assumptions tab. So the benefit plan is created on the assumptions tab, and then it gets assigned to a salary plan, because then employees are assigned to salary plans. So that's how anybody that's on salary plan 8, or classified salary schedule annualized, they will get the classified employees benefits. And you can see that. We'll go to the employees. A quick way to see that is, so you have this benefit column here. And to see where the benefits come from, oh, sorry. Put the cursor in there, let it sit for a second. So because she's licensed, or he's licensed, he's on the licensed salary plan, which is assigned to the certified district employees benefit plan. So which was 0.5 or higher, gets $14.30 a month times 12, $17,160. And that's why you have $17,160 in the medical benefits column here. I'm gonna refresh. When you go back to the tab, your change will still be there, and you can either refresh to get rid of it or cancel that pop-up and keep your change. So that's really what you're going to be doing for the benefit plans, is really just making sure that your qualification levels haven't changed, and probably only modifying your monthly benefit amount. The administrators, let me see how this one's set up. This one, because we have use actual deduction amount. So the way it works for administrators is it actually pulls in, because a lot of them have their own strange benefit plans. There really is no plan. Each administrator has their own negotiated rate. So we just pull in the rate and use that. We pull it into divisions columns, and then that gets copied into the model, and that is their rate. Let's look at an administrator over here. If you'll notice that, so here's the rates. Let's do an infinite visions lookup on this employee. Now everything seems too big on my monitor. 9,531. So it should be, I would think, these three combined: the dental, medical, and vision. Now notice that I clicked and highlighted. You can do that on any grid, and you get the sum. Sorry about it being so big. You get the sum in the bottom left, 9531. And that is exactly what we have in their medical benefits here. So you tell ESP which of these pay types are considered medical benefits, and then it's going to just, for these administrators, it's going to pull them in the actuals. And notice that it also makes these cells light green, which means are editable. So if you know it's going to be higher or a different number, you could go in here and manually change it here in the grid. As well, if you want to do just a blanket inflation factor, you could do that here. You select the plan and just give them a % inflation factor or a dollar inflation factor. So 3 ways to change their values. Well, either change it in visions or use the inflation factor, or manually change it on the in their benefits here. Any questions? Again, the administrator's salaries, they're on plan 1. So if you go to this plan 1 here is set to administrator benefit plans. So it's really important to understand how they get from the benefits get from the assumptions tab to the salary plans. And then employees are assigned to salary plans, and that's how the benefit values get to these benefit columns, these benefits here. And then they get rolled up into this one. This is the glyph or the icon for medical benefits, 0240. It might be different for you guys' district, but this is the one with the little red cross symbol. I guess that's the white cross is the medical benefits. And those are not calculated on any non-FTE account. So it's just mostly always going to come from the employees tab. Sound good? Any questions? All right, we've only got about 10 minutes left. I really don't want to jump into pay components just yet because it's kind of its own thing. We'll talk about that tomorrow. So is there any questions for you guys, from you guys? Tomorrow we'll talk about supplemental pay. I believe most of you have them already set up. So we just want to go through them and make sure that they're configured correctly. Oregon Trail, I know you guys are still setting everything up with Scott. So that's good. But that's usually the biggest, when we get a new client, that's usually the biggest problem, not problem, but learning curve is the supplemental pay. Any questions about anything for your new year? And once you feel like you've got your employees squared away, and when Scott rebuilds your scenario for you, and we make sure that we have the correct working and adopted loaded, because it's very important, right? Because your working is going to get copied into your model, and that's going to be your starting point for all of your non-salary values. You notice mine did not even get copied over. So we're going to fix that. So this 29,000 for 0336 should be in my amount column. And that's going to be your starting point. So we got to make sure your starting point is right. Any questions about anything in ESP, not just New Year, anything you want to ask? Oh, we got to make sure that your actuals are pulling in from the right place too. And remember that, you see all of those infinite vision factors on the assumptions tab. And that's because a lot of these columns in visions, like the annual rate, even the fixed cost, because you have a fixed cost here, right? If you put the mouse cursor over this one, you get the same, but you want to keep these rates as what they are this year so that you can, this is just for reference only. You could say, well, this is what they're getting this year. You could always grab that column, move it to the left of your model, do a delta, and it kind of gives you kind of a quick, this is what they're getting this year, but next year it's going to be $44,810 more because of changes we've made on the assumptions of calculations. So remember to keep your infinite vision factors. If you go back over here, every calculation and every benefit, it has an infinite visions factor. Keep that what it is this year, so that when you're looking at the same columns, you're looking at apples and apples and oranges and oranges. what they're getting this year versus what you expect them to get in your year that you're budgeting for. So it's just for reference. And a while ago, the reason why that employee didn't copy over was because it was waiting for my comment and it popped up on my other screen and I didn't see it. So, or else that employee would have copied over from the daily into the model. We might do that tomorrow once we get everyone's new year set up correctly. And we'll try to reconcile again too as well tomorrow. Okay, well, I guess if there's nothing else, maybe we'll get out a little early. Scott, do you have anything? Does anybody have anything?
Is Scott still with us?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I don't know if
Yeah, I was muted.
I don't know if you want to take a minute to jump on with me after
Yeah.
a couple minutes.
Yeah, do you want to, why don't you just start Team Viewer
Okay.
and then I'll join you there.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
All right, Kim, Tammy, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
Oh, hey,
Thank you.
Tammy Booth.
I'm here. I'm unmuting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we got to learn to give
I-
people a second to unmute. I'm learning.
I did figure out about those employees that coming up from the daily actuals.
Oh, right.
It was a problem with the a change in how we were loading employees that did not have an employee ID, which were the vacancies. So
Got it.
but I got that fixed.
Yay.
All right. So I'm going to actually probably about 4 o'clock start updating the databases and creating the new years.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Tammy, talk to you later.